Horses are non-ruminant herbivores, which means that the majority of their diet consists of plant matter. The mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, and the highly developed large intestine of the horse, which is formed of the cecum, the large colon, the small colon, and the rectum, make up the horse's digestive system. Before we begin, click the subscribe button right now, which is totally free. The oral cavity. The teeth, tongue, and salivary glands are some of the anatomical components that make up the mouth. When feeds reach the mouth, the process of digestion can officially begin. The digestive process starts when the horse chews, which reduces the size of the feed particles and mixes them with saliva at the same time. In addition to acting as a buffer against the acid that is produced in the stomach, saliva also works as a lubricant, making it simpler for food to travel through the esophagus. The bolus of feed is transported from the esophagus to the stomach once it has been swallowed. The abdomen or the stomach. The stomach of the horse is the most diminutive unit of the digestive tract. Its capacity ranges from about 2 to 4 gallons, and it accounts for about 10% of the digestive tract's overall volume. The stomach of the horse is proportionally much smaller to the rest of its body than that of any other domestic animal. Because of the limited space, we recommend eating more frequently but in smaller portions. The main tasks of the stomach are the mixing, storing, and controlled release of feed into the small intestine. Additionally, the stomach secretes pepsin, which is necessary to start the digestion of protein. In the stomach, there is only a very little amount of absorption of nutrients. The small intestine is the next part of the digestive tract to receive food after it has been digested in the stomach. Small intestine. The small intestine of a horse is around 70 feet long and accounts for about 30% of the animal's overall digestive tract. The food travels through the horse's small intestine at a speed of around 1 foot per minute, and the digestate can be delivered to the cecum in as little as 45 minutes after a meal has been consumed. The rate of passage and the amount of feed that is consumed both have an effect on digestion and the amount of nutrients absorbed. Both digestion and absorption will suffer if the volume is raised while the transit rate remains the same. The majority of the non-structural carbohydrates, starch, protein, and fat that enter the body are absorbed after being broken down by enzymes in the small intestine. Amylase enzymes are responsible for the digestion of starch, whereas lipase enzymes are responsible for the digestion of fat, and protease enzymes are responsible for the digestion of protein. These enzymes, which are generated in either the pancreas or the small intestine, are responsible for the conversion of starch into glucose, lipids, oil, into glycerol and fatty acids, and protein into amino acids. The small intestine is where the majority of the digestion of fats and proteins takes place. Because the starch that is found in cereal grains is shielded from digestion by the seed coat of the grains, starch digestion is frequently only partially successful. If starch is not broken down in the small intestine, it will be transported to the hindgut, where it will be rapidly fermented by bacteria. This will result in the creation of lactic acid, the accumulation of acid in the hindgut, and disorders such as colic, metabolic acidosis, and laminitis/founder. Hindgut. Cecum, big colon, small colon, and rectum are the anatomical structures that make up the horse's hindgut. The cecum accounts for 12–15% of the tract's total capacity, while the colon accounts for 40–50% of the tract's total capacity. The microbial breakdown, fermentation, of dietary fiber, which is comprised of structural carbohydrates and comes predominantly from forages in the horse's diet, is the primary function of the hindgut. The fermentation process results in the production of important end products known as volatile fatty acids, acetic, propionic, and butyric. These acids can be used as a source of energy for horses that are primarily fed forages such as pasture or hay. Methane, carbon dioxide, and water are also produced during the fermentation process, in addition to the majority of the B vitamins and several amino acids. The reabsorption of water is another one of the hindgut's functions. The make-up of the microbial population can be changed by the composition of the diet. When starch is introduced to the hindgut, amylolytic bacteria, which are starch fermenters, immediately begin the process of rapidly fermenting the starch, which results in the production of significant amounts of lactic acid and volatile fatty acids. VFA. The pH level in the hindgut begins to drop as a result of the acidic character of the products that are produced during fermentation. A low pH provides favorable conditions for the growth of pathogenic bacteria, which in turn can contribute to the development of serious disorders such laminitis or founder, colic, endotoxemia, and metabolic acidosis. The significance of the spleen to the production of red blood cells. When the horse is required to engage in strenuous activity, it can access the massive supply of red blood cells that are stored in its spleen and use them to fuel its body. The spleen is a thick organ that is red in color and lies against the rib cage. It is located high on the left side of the abdomen and presses up against the rib cage. There are two primary categories of spleens: those that help strengthen an individual's immune system, and the type that a horse possesses, which also acts as a storage organ for red blood cells. It is impossible for the body to receive oxygen from the lungs and deliver it to the rest of the body without the help of red blood cells. When a horse starts to exercise, the spleen contracts and releases stored red cells into the bloodstream. This helps the animal recover more quickly. The spleen of a horse is exceptionally massive, and it has the capacity to discharge an additional 30% of red blood cells when necessary. Because of this, the horse's capacity to transport oxygen during exercise is significantly improved as a result of the increase in blood volume that is brought on by the contraction of the spleen. It is one of the distinctive physiological characteristics of the horse, and it is one of the reasons why horses are considered to be among the best runners. Simply causing the horse to become aroused can as easily cause a splenic constriction to take place. The conclusion that can be drawn from this is that the measurements of red cell counts, hematocrit, in samples taken from aroused horses do not provide an appropriate evaluation of the horse's hematocrit when it is at rest. Measurements of a horse's hematocrit taken while it is relaxed and at rest are not a reliable indicator of either its oxygen carrying capacity or its degree of anemia for the same reason. Horses cannot vomit. The inability of horses to regurgitate their food creates a precarious and challenging circumstance in the event that food becomes lodged in the stomach. An obstruction develops at the junction of the esophagus and stomach, or at the sphincter that connects the stomach to the beginning of the small intestine. In horses, the esophagus is protected by a belt of muscle as it travels down into the stomach. This band stops food from going back up out of the stomach and into the esophagus when it's swallowed. When the valve is relaxed, food is able to move freely down into the stomach from the esophagus. However, when the valve is tightened, it stops food from moving back up into the esophagus by closing off the entrance. The same sphincters and mechanisms that are responsible for keeping food in the stomach are present in humans, but it is evident that these mechanisms can be easily defeated if there is sufficient pressure or a hazardous chemical present. Horses are different from humans in that their sphincter valve is more stronger, and it will never open up no matter what the circumstances are. In horses, choke, also known as esophageal obstruction, is an additional dangerous ailment that is slightly connected to it. Choke is a potentially fatal condition that can be caused by any kind of feed, including forages, and typically affects animals that are extremely active and consume too quickly. The inability of the horse to breathe is not affected by the condition known as choking, which prevents food from making its way to the stomach. This is because it takes place in the esophagus rather than the windpipe. A blockage in the respiratory tract of a human will often prevent them from being able to breathe. We hope to see you again in another amazing horse video. Make sure to subscribe and press the bell icon for latest updates.